Hi guys, my name is Jamie Shaw. I am the International Research Manager here at Brightfield Group. I would like to cover today Canada and Europe's responses to the COVID-19 process and how those will play into the cannabis markets. It's a bit of a dark topic, so I've got a sunny background here for you. I hope that lightens it up a bit. So we'll hop right into Canada. CBD and cannabis are treated essentially the same way, so we're going to discuss them under the same umbrella, but what we're really looking at is differences between the medical and adult use cannabis markets. So medical, we do expect to see very slightly affected. Its sales take place overwhelmingly online and serve for very serious illnesses by and large. Thus, the market really shouldn't be too heavily impacted. But a few things will play in, will factor into growth. One is that new patient numbers will stagnate this year. Patients are either unable to or uninterested in seeing their physicians for cannabis needs because of risk of contagion. Also, Canada Post has elected to not deliver packages that require signature, which is all cannabis. So patients must either go into the post office to pick up packages, which competes with concerns about social distancing, or in some cases they might need to pay more through other services that are still delivering but maybe more expensive. So those may act as deterrents. But despite all this, 43% of Canadian medical consumers that we were able to survey recently reported using cannabis more frequently due to this crisis. So their spending may offset drops in new patient enrollments or from shipping deterrents. On the adult use side, we're expecting more of an impact. So non-medical cannabis users won't treat product as a top priority necessarily when they're struggling financially. And in fact, we're already seeing that among cannabis consumers, particularly younger, moderate, and occasional users. They are buying less often and decreasing spending. So on our survey that we ran at the end of March of this year, we asked 1,400 plus Canadian users about their cannabis behavior as it relates to COVID, and 45% said they were already buying cannabis less often or planning to, and 44% said they were spending less or planning to. So pretty monumental impact there. Though most provinces have deemed cannabis retailers and supply chains essential, some haven't. Also, Ontario has just changed course and decided that dispensaries are no longer essential, though delivery is still being permitted. So those are going to be closing soon as well. Beyond that, some dispensaries have also decided to limit hours or shutter anyway of their own volition. So that's really limiting consumer traffic in those brick and mortars. E-commerce is a viable and tempting option for a lot of consumers, and it's an important one. Of course, Canada Post decision presents a barrier there too, though of course consumers can pick up product at the post office. The likely that's one more point of friction and maybe a deterrent. And while e-commerce hasn't traditionally been terribly popular on the formal market in Canada, it actually has really become popular in these recent days. The survey data show that 43% of consumers have already switched from physical dispensaries to delivery or online ordering, or have plans to do so. Again, huge numbers there. So really seeing some shifts in this market. And despite the drops that we discussed before, 32% of those surveyed are using cannabis more frequently, especially heavy users. And 25% are currently planning to spend more, or currently doing so. So there's definitely still a great deal of demand that's going to need to be met. It's not all bad news. What does this mean for competitors? Well, it's a tough break for companies that were really counting on those 2.0 revenue boosts. A lot of licensed producers, big and small, are struggling with liquidity already, and store closures and consumer fears aren't going to help that. It's going to take, the much anticipated traffic is going to take a hit. Another interesting point there is that we expected to see inhalable markets hit harder due to concerns about respiratory complications, but that's not actually the case. Consumers are reporting, only 4% of them are reporting that they're using fewer inhalable products as a result of COVID-19. So really those heavily reliant on flower sales or going into vapes hard for 2.0 shouldn't have particular concerns versus their competitors. Hopping into Europe, we aren't expecting to see the medical market too heavily dampened by COVID-19. It's quite similar to Canada in that it's highly restrictive and cannabis is used to treat very serious illnesses. So patients are going to prioritize it. It's pretty well insulated from the effects of this. Also, channels where cannabis is accessible, such as pharmacies, are not going to close. Those are vital, as they would be for any pharmaceutical. So those shouldn't be at risk. Again, new patient enrollment might wane as patients take a backseat to those affected by the pandemic, but that should boost back up once things calm down. The one thing we do expect to be more of a concern in the medium term is supply chain, particularly because a lot of European markets import the bulk or all of their cannabis products. So disruptions to trade and shipping, manufacturing abroad may have some shortages or cause some shortages rather in these markets. On the European CBD front, short-term impacts include some of the same we will see in Canada's adult use market, such as competing budgetary priorities among consumers. CBD is just not always considered an essential medical item or an essential item for consumers. We'll also see slowing traffic due to retail channels closing or customer fears and social distancing. Some will be assuaged by e-commerce, but it's just not as quick and reliable as is typically seen in the US, for example. And customers are also likely to experience delays due to this sudden massive shift in consumer behavior. Another concern is the cancellation of events, which are an important networking opportunity, especially for smaller players looking to get that face time at conferences and expos. So it might curb expansion possibilities for those looking to broaden distribution networks. In terms of longer term impacts, we really expect to see a different nature of market come out of this. It's not just COVID-19. There's been a whole storm of things that have happened in late 2019 and early 2020. Novel foods regulations are starting to be enforced in different countries across the region, which is a major deal for a lot of smaller companies. The vaping illness crisis took place relatively recently as well. And now COVID-19 is absolutely going to be another factor in the operations of a lot of smaller players and even larger players. So we expect that coming out of this, we'll see much more nimble, strategic, efficient, resilient players surviving, and especially better capitalized ones that will be able to be successful on a formal market. It will look quite different than it looks today and has looked historically. So very interesting times in the European CBD market. We will keep you guys posted as things continue to unfold. Best of luck out there. Stay safe. Thanks for listening.